Hey, welcome to the Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon series. I'm your host, Captain Matt, and today we're going to talk about how to buy a used boat for sale by owner. So, when you deal with the dealer, when you deal with the broker, and you deal with the private seller, there are some different things that you need to look out for. And what we're going to talk about is when you're dealing with a private seller that's for sale by owner. You find the boat on Craigslist, you find the boat on the boat trader, it's sitting in a driveway, you see it for sale at the marina, but you're dealing with the individual that owns the boat. So we're going to talk about how to spot a scam, common for sale by owner issues to avoid, because there are some differences when you're working with somebody that is selling their own boat. Options to consider. Buying a used boat, there are some things that you need to look out for. How to avoid someone else's headache. This is a big one when you're buying from an individual. Must do inspections before buying, financing, insurance tips, and at the end, we've got a free gift for you. So we'll probably be 20, 30 minutes or so and going into depth. Make sure you catch that last one. Like or comment it if you have some comments or some questions as we're going through. That is always appreciated. So there was some research done about 2 years ago now on boats on Craigslist specifically, and 1 in 7 of them were found to have either major issues or was an outright scam. So it was that boat wasn't theirs to sell. But the major issues was they had title issues. The title was salvaged, or the boat had sank and was salvaged by the insurance company. They totaled it out, but it had shown up for sale a year later and wasn't disclosed. Issues with the title. The trailer didn't have a title. If your state titles trailers. So these are issues that you really want to look out for. On the other hand, buying from a private seller, you can get a great deal. Sometimes you can find the absolute perfect boat, and sometimes it can be easier. So I'm a big fan of buying used boats if you do these right things that we're going to talk about. So what can be an indicator? What can be an indicator of a scam or an issue? Well, no phone contact and poor grammar in the emails. If you see a boat that's for sale and they won't allow you to talk to them on the phone at any point, now up front, yeah, it makes total sense. The email conversations to kind of weed out the people that aren't really going to buy the boat, that makes sense to me. But if you're at the point where you're very interested and you would like to see the boat, you start talking about sending up money up front, that should be a warning sign. Even if they require or say, hey, we'll use an escrow service, we'll send the money to this escrow service and then it'll be held there. Just make sure it's a reputable escrow service. Escrow.com is one that has a good reputation, but it's not that difficult for somebody to set up a fake escrow account looking website, have you put the money in there, and that be totally bogus. So just be aware. These red flags aren't run away and don't buy this boat. These red flags are just that, hey, there's a flag. Let me slow it down. Let me make sure that we're not making a mistake. They won't allow you to inspect the boat in person. It's a red flag. Why would I buy a boat, even a $5,000, $10,000 boat, if you're not going to let me inspect it in person? Probably there's another boat out there. They have no title, or the title's in a different name. So before you hand over the check, before you give the money, you want to make sure that you see a copy of that title. Match up the serial numbers, boat, motor, trailer. Match up the names on their ID and on the title. Just check those things to make sure that there's no mismatch, there's no funny business going on. Even if it's not funny business, but it could be a major issue for you when you go to get the boat titled in your name, and they've got their money and they're off doing their life and they're not going to be helpful to get it fixed. Try to take care of all that stuff before you buy the boat. It has water damage or the boat has sank. There are some telltale signs that we'll talk about, or they won't allow a sea trial. I'm going to encourage everybody that buys a used power boat to make sure you run that boat under load and do the maneuvers that we talk about. Okay, so this is mainly for people looking at fiberglass deck boats, bow riders, runabouts, cuddy cabins, those type of boats. We're going to keep it focused on that. There'll be another one for pontoons that you can check out. Stern drives and outboards. As we go through, I'm going to talk about some differences on the stern drive and the outboard. I've done a whole how to buy a used boat where I go into the options and the details of the benefits of outboards, the benefits of stern drive, the benefits of different types of boats for first-time boat buyers. You can check those videos out. They'll be down below in the description. You might want to check those. But for right now, we're just going to share some things to look out for specific to each of those. And options. There are certain options on a bow rider, on a deck boat, on a fiberglass runabout boat that are expensive, difficult, and sometimes impossible to add. Okay, so the sun pad or walkthrough on the layout. If you have that layout, it's impossible to change it. The walkthrough, you can see that little arrow where you step from the swim platform through a little walkway down into the boat. The sun pad covers the whole thing. You got to decide which of those layouts you like as you're searching. A bimini top. A bimini top, if you're in an area in the south where it gets really hot and you're going to want that bimini, that's a $800 to a $2,000 option depending on the type of boat that you're looking at. If you don't have it, they can be expensive to add. And if it's something that you really want, consider that in the price of the boat. A canvas cover, whether you're towing it, whether you're keeping it on a lift, whether you're just putting the cover on for winter storage, those covers can add up. So for a 20-foot boat, your canvas cover, you may be able to get a real cheap one for $200-300. A real good one's going to be $800 to $1,000. If you want some extra cover, it may be even more. So if you're looking at a used boat, you want to make sure you inspect that canvas. You want to make sure that the bimini top, the canvas cover is in good condition, because if you have to get new Sunbrella canvas or new canvas, it can be expensive to get that replaced. You want to figure that into the cost of buying the boat. A wake tower. Wakeboard towers are very popular right now. If it has a wakeboard tower on it, you want to know, hey, was this installed at the factory? And sometimes you can just look at the installation and tell if it was done at the factory or not. If it wasn't, you want to look for stress cracks. If it's not backplated properly and it's not installed properly, which is really at the factory is the best way to do it, because you can get to the backside, you can put a plate back there and make sure you're not just bolting into the fiberglass and the gel coat. If it doesn't have a wake tower and you want one, they can be from $800 to $10,000 depending on the type of tower and the size of your boat. So it can be an expensive option to add on. And my encouragement would be, make sure that if you do get the wakeboard tower, that it's installed properly, because it can totally destroy the value of your boat. It can cause major damage, and you don't want that to happen to you. So you may be better finding one that has a factory tower on, or making sure that you get the perfect tower that is mounted properly. And a head compartment, toilet or porta potty. If it doesn't have that head compartment, it's difficult and sometimes impossible to add, and you just want to make sure, if that's something you want, that you have it on the boat that you're looking for. So those are some big options that you want to think about. Now, here's the big one. When you're buying a used boat, yes, you can look at it. You can see if it's in good condition. Is the upholstery nice? Is the carpet nice? But there are certain things that you want to check that if you just say, oh, it's a beautiful boat, it's a great price, and you buy it, you may be buying yourself some serious issues. So the first one, any boat that's the 90s, early 2000s into the 80s, they used plywood in the floor. They didn't encapsulate it in fiberglass like they do now. And what could happen is, if that floor got left wet over and over, that floor starts rotting. I've seen 94, 96, 98 model boats that 10 years later, the floor is soft and it's spongy. What you want to do is you want to check the sturdiness of the floor by the ski locker, up in the bow, by the pedestals of the seats, and in the back where people board the boat, wherever they're going to step with their wet life jackets and just that water's dripping and it's constantly wet. Just make sure that's all solid. Yes, there are some cheap fixes to fix a weak floor, but they're cheap and they're not the best way to go in most cases. If you start digging into a soft floor and you pull up that first layer, you may find rotten stringers. You may find just a world of mess that gets very expensive and very difficult to fix the right way, and you may end up with nothing. A boat that looks great from the outside that has a soft floor could be one of the biggest mistakes that you make. You want to check the fiberglass bottom. You want to check for big gouges and dings. I'm not talking little nicks in the gel coat, little scratches. I'm talking about big dings. I'm talking about blisters, which means that the boat's been left in the water for an extended period of time. You just want to know exactly what you're getting. My rule of thumb when you're buying a used boat is make sure you know all the good and all the bad so you can make a wise decision for the price that you're going to pay. Check the stereo, the electronics. Make sure you power everything up. Turn everything on, the lights, the gauges, the switches. There can be a broken switch that when you hit it, you find out it's broken. If you just look at it, you may not even know that it's broken. But the first time you hit it, it falls off. The upholstery with the canvas, we talked about how expensive those can be. Hatches and latches. You want to make sure everything shuts properly and opens properly. You want to see what's in those compartments. You want to see, is there a big bottle of can of worms down there that is going to be costly. The wiring and corrosion. If you're in a saltwater environment, you want to check all of the wiring. It's another reason why you want to go through all the switches and gauges is make sure everything's working. Corrosion can be a catastrophe on some of these boats. And if you get into a wiring issue and all of a sudden your boat's not starting, your navigation lights aren't coming, your blower's not running, it can be expensive and time consuming to try to find that issue if it's corrosion. The age of the fuel and the last time it's ran. One of the things from buying from a private seller is they may be totally honest and upfront, but they don't know certain things about boats. They may not understand that if the fuel's been sitting for a year or two, you might be better off pumping it out and putting fresh fuel in. They might not be aware that if their boat sat for 5 years, that that's not actually a good thing. That's a bad thing because mechanical things need to run. It means that there's likely some things that when you run it, they'll run for a short period of time, but they're going to break down very quickly because they sat and they seized up or they didn't have the lubrication through and they run for a little bit and then they start seizing up and it's not running as smooth, so it's more wear and tear on it, and then it goes out a short time later. So I encourage you to ask these questions of the current owner. Hey, when's the last time it ran? When's the last time that that you added fuel? How old is this fuel? When's the last time you changed the oil and the gear lube and changed your impeller? When's the last time you've done maintenance on this boat? Did you winterize it? Have you always winterized it? Those are questions that you want to ask so that you know for sure what you're getting into. And assume most people are honest and ethical, but verify. Then you want to verify yourself. And you verify that by checking out the engine. That's the most expensive portion of the boat at this point. So if you're looking at a used boat, an outboard, a 250 horsepower outboard to replace that new is like 30 or 40 grand to have everything changed out, the cabling and installed and the controls and all that. A stern drive just to replace just to replace the motor, the engine, that can be 6, 8, 10 grand to do that. So if you're looking at a used boat, it's a significant portion. You want to make sure you inspect that. So you want to know the engine hours. If it has an hour gauge, great. You may be able to hook it up to a computer, and the computer will tell you if it doesn't have an hour gauge. If in the 2000s or so, most engines you'll be able to pull it. Not all, but most engines you can pull the engine hours and the history of that engine off the computer. A technician will be able to do that for you. The engine oil and fluids, you want to check them. Ask when they were changed. Then get your white rag out. How dirty is that oil? What's the gear lube look like? Is it filled to the proper level? This is the most important check that you're going to do on any used boat that you buy, and that's a compression check. A compression check is to see how strong that engine is firing, how much power it's putting out. It's very simple to do. You can buy a compression gauge. You go through a process. There'll be a link down at the bottom of the video where you can buy a pressure gauge, a compression gauge, and how to check it. So you can check those there. But you want to make sure that it's firing as strong as it should, and that every cylinder is within 10% of that first pull. So the first cylinder, if it's 180, you want to make sure that the other cylinders are, 170 to 190 or so. That's a little bit more than a 10% gap, but you want to make sure that they're in range, that you don't have 180, 180, 180, 120, 180. That's an issue. So that compression, boat can look great, floor can be solid, everything is pristine. Sounds great running on the muffler, just running it on a hose. Man, everything's perfect. Let's do this. Well, when you get out under load, I've had a boat that I almost sold that I told the guy buying it, you need to do a compression check, because I encourage everybody that I sell boats to do this inspection. Instead of spending 25 grand on a boat that was less than 10 years old, looked great, I thought it was a great boat. We found out it had a compression issue, and I said, don't buy it. I had to go tell the seller, hey, we had this issue, and now we need to deal with that. But it's something that can catch you off guard, and it can be that it overheated once, and now we have an issue. It doesn't have to be anything real terrible, but you can lose compression for a couple of reasons that you may not recognize with other inspections. You can have a technician do it. It's about $100, $200. They'll check compression for you. Most mechanics will be able to do it. You can do it yourself pretty easily as well if you're mechanically inclined. Check the prop condition. Not only do you want to check the condition of the prop, but you want to spin that prop as well. Make sure it spins properly and that there's not a bent prop shaft where you see some wobble. That's going to be an indication that you're going to get vibration, that eventually that vibration is going to cause some issues, and it's a boat that I would step away from. And then you want to check the condition of the drive. If you're looking at a stern drive, you want to shake it. You kind of wiggle it around, make sure that it's not loose there on the transom. You want to check the boot around the outside, the bellows. Make sure that rubber is nice and soft and supple. That water's not going to get in there. If there's if it's brittle, if there's cracks, there might be water getting in there, which is going to cause issues with the gimbal bearing, and you're going to have some expensive repairs to get the boat running in good condition. You want to make sure that transom is nice and solid and not rotted if it's an older boat. And by kind of shaking that stern drive, you'll be able to tell, okay, we're in good shape, or ooh, there's an issue there that isn't visual. You've got to actually do some checking on it. Now, once you've done that, hey, this is still a boat. It's looking good. We've got through all the red flags. We got through the initial visual inspection. Let's do a test drive. Let's make sure that this boat runs the way that you're telling me it runs. Trust but verify. So you're going to start it cold if possible, which means put it in the water and crank it up for the very first time in front of you. See what happens. Once you get it fired up, you want to just listen to it. Let it sit idle for a little bit. Warm up and just listen. Does it sound smooth? Does it sound rough? Once it's idled for a little bit, maybe you can go through, and this is a good time to check the gauges and check the depth finder, do all those things that you need to check. Take it out of the no-wake zone. Make sure that you're a competent boat operator. If you're not, bring one along with you. So make sure that you're safe with all of these maneuvers I share with you. When you're in open water and it's safe, go from idle to wide open throttle. Get that boat up on plane. Run it for a minute or two at wide open throttle. How does it sound? How does it feel? Feel it in your feet. Is there vibration? Are there noises that sound off? Come back to 3/4 throttle or so. Again, be safe. I don't know what boat you're test driving. If it's a 115 mile an hour cigarette boat, don't do it this way. But come back to a safe speed, about 3/4 throttle on most boats, and do a nice sharp turn to port, to starboard, to left, to right. 360-degree turn. How does it feel? Does it hold tight in the water? Does it make any weird sounds? Does it do anything odd? Does it cavitate, which means the prop loses grip on the water and spins out? How does it feel? How does it sound? Straighten it out. Start adjusting the trim. Does the trim go up and down? How does that feel? Is it working properly? Go, come back to idle, sit in the middle of the water, and just go in and out of gear. Forward, neutral, reverse. Count of 3 or so. Reverse for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Neutral. 1, 2, 3. Forward. 1, 2, 3. Neutral. 1, 2, 3. How does it shift? Is that cable going smooth? Is it clunking really hard, or is it clunking the way a motor should clunk? It's going to have a little bit of a sound when it goes into gear, depending on the type of motor you're looking at. But if you're not used to boating, bring somebody that knows what it should sound like. Go out on a boat and hear those sounds, and you'll be able to tell if something's off or not. If you got an outboard, look for that water spitting out of the pee hole is what I call it. You can see that red arrow with that water shooting out. There should be a nice steady stream of water shooting out when you're underway, when you're under a load. If you're just sitting, it may be kind of dribbling, but you want to make sure that there's water coming out in a good steady stream when you're underway. That's going to tell you that the impeller is in good condition. The impeller's picking up that water and it's cooling properly. If not, guess what? There's some maintenance that needs to be done. Although I would encourage you, unless you have the service history, I would encourage you to get an oil, gear lube, impeller change right out of the gate. So you're starting fresh, because those can lead to expensive repairs and ruin an afternoon on the water. If you've got a stern drive, an inboard, outboard, just check that temperature gauge. Make sure that that temp's not getting too hot, and that it's within the good range for your particular boat. And that, again, that's going to tell you about that impeller. But you're checking everything to make sure that it's running properly. You're listening to make sure everything's sounding right. If it's got a trailer, while the boat's off the trailer, I encourage you to do these inspections. Check the winch stands and the straps. Everything looking good, safe. Lights. Are the lights working? Do they work with your truck? The bunks. Are the bunks or the rollers in good condition? The carpet good? The rollers firm, and are they brittle and cracking and falling off? Check the axles and the bearings. I've heard stories of people buying a used boat, especially in saltwater environment. They came down, they kind of bumped over a curb, and axle broke, leaving the dealership. You can avoid these things if you actually just inspect the trailer, inspect those bearings. You don't want to haul the boat home and burn up your bearings and get left on the side of the road. The tires, trailer tires are 100, 150 bucks a piece. If you've got a dual axle trailer, that's $400, $500, $600 of tires. You want to check the wear, you want to check the age, and I have a whole section, a video about how to buy a used trailer, and I talk through all of the stuff that you need to know. And again, you want to do it while the boat's off the trailer, because you can get access, you can see better, and it's just easier to do it that way. Financing. When you're financing a boat from a private seller, banks can be a little tougher to work with. So I'm going to encourage you to look at whoever you personally bank with. A local credit union is a great option for a lot of used boats. They require small, if not zero, down payments at times. They have good rates and good terms, assuming you have good credit. But also check a marine lender. A marine lender may be a little bit more stringent on their requirements, but they will tend to go longer terms. They'll tend to want 10 to 20% down, and they have pretty strong, aggressive rates in most cases. So check all of those. There's a whole video on financing. You can get more detail on each of those. Same thing with insurance. Insurance on a used bow rider or deck boat, assuming it's not too fast, depending on your history, $500 to $1,200 a year, depending on the region. Again, there's a video on boat insurance that you can check out. It's in the description below. And then this is something I encourage for everybody that's buying a used boat, is get a boat history report. It's like a Carfax for boats. Now, the boat history reports, I think they're like 40 or 50 bucks. They're pretty inexpensive when you're looking at buying a 5, 10, 50, $100,000 used boat. If the boat has any insurance claims, they'll show up. If there's any title issues, it'll show you the history of the title. It just shows you a lot of the things that a Carfax shows you, but for boats. And it's just a little safety net to make sure that there's no issue that you're going to run across that would be costly for you. So you can check that out again in the description. You can get the link to that. Now, I do get a small amount if you do buy that boat history report, but it's very small. It's a good investment. You can check it out and see if it makes sense for you. Now, I told you, got a free gift for you. You can get the Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon Toolkit to help walk you through the process of finding the right boat at the best price, how to demo a boat the right way. It's a checklist that you can take with you to do all the maneuvers you need to do. Must ask questions for dealers and private sellers. How to maximize your trade if you're working with the dealer. How to get the best boat loan. How to get the best boat insurance, and much more. That's yours for free. Just go to boatbuyerssecretweapon.com/toolkit and you can grab your free copy, get instant access to it. People are telling me it's been a huge value just to have that, to kind of keep them organized, to keep them on track, to not get overly excited. They've told me it's something that's helped the spouse get on board with the process, that it's not just an emotional decision, that they're actually making sure they're buying a smart boat, making a smart decision. And you can check that out. And you can also check out all of the other videos, which are down in the description down below. Thank you for watching this. And remember, here at Boat Buyer's Secret Weapon, we are committed to helping first-time and experienced boat buyers find the perfect boat at the lowest price for years and years of fun and hassle-free boating, because life truly is better on a boat. Take care.